Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of A Little Modular. Today we will take a look at 3 different modules by a Romanian company, Feedback Modules. If you have watched my previous videos, you probably know this company. They make awesome modules which are not expensive. But to be honest, with those 3 modules, at first I was really skeptical because these are just the channel strips from some old school mixers. And I was thinking, that is not too sexy, right? I mean, channel strips, really? A gain, a volume, and a really primitive EQ, high, low, that's it? And what a surprise it was after I have run some signals through them. It was incredibly surprising to learn that those small things can actually inject so much character and oomph into any signal. And that is no coincidence, because these 3 channel strips are exact clones of some iconic mixers from the 70s, 80s and 90s that were used by early electronic musicians, pioneers for the early techno and house tracks of the 90s, for instance. The first one is the one here on the right. It is a clone of the Boss KM60 mixer. 6-channel mixer. It was used, for instance, by Tangerine Dream. The other mixer, the one in the middle, it's called Pre-BX, and this is a clone of a mixer by the same company, Boss, which was called BX8. It was an 8-channel mixer. And the last one is a clone of Mackie CR series from the 90s, Pre-CR, which, for instance, was one of the favorite mixers of Liam Howlett from Prodigy because of its edgy and the punchy sound. And they were often used for some certain duties. For instance, the BX8 was used many times to overdrive and emphasize the drum kick from TR-808 machine drum by Roland. And this one right here, CR, Mackie CR, was often used to enhance the TB303 bassline signals. So it became more edgy, more aggressive while pushed. So these mixers were used because of those 2 things. They were cheap and they sounded really nice while pushed, as you have heard in the demo at the beginning of this video. And they produce a lot of noise. For instance, the Pre-KM has a lot of noise, but it's choking in a nice way. I love this kind of breathing with the noise sort of thing. So for me, it was one of the biggest discoveries in my modular journey, that such small and simple and primitive, in fact, things like a channel strip can make such a huge difference and actually sound better than some of the dedicated distortion effects. And they are cheap, like 70 euros per channel strip. Of course, you can buy originals and they're not so expensive nowadays. You can buy a BX8 for 200 euro used, I think. But the thing is, when you buy a BX8, it's big, it's clunky, and it takes room, and condition of those mixers can be different because they are old. And for instance, the BX8 doesn't look too good and it was built cheap, not to last. So for me, it's a lot better to invest in those small channel strips because you get the flavor of those mixers. Doesn't take a lot of space and it's cheap as well. So let's take a look at those mixers and what are the controls on them. Each of them has 3 knobs, as you can see. The first one here is the high EQ. You can increase the heights, you can decrease the heights. It's neutral at the noon position. You can do the same thing with the lows right here. And the last knob here is for volume control. If you want to add some grit to it, you just use the gain right here. So as you can hear right now, no grit, no distortion, and I can just really push it and add some hair to it. Okay, and we have the same controls on all 3 mixers. The only difference is on the pre-KM, where the gain is switchable in the stepped fashion. So in the middle position, it's the lowest gain. If you switch it to the right position, it will give you more gain, and even more, the maximum amount of gain on the left. And you can hear it adds like a small slap delay, crazy stuff. But we will be getting back to this. And that's the whole philosophy. If you want to push it, if you want to distort it, use the gain. Here you have the volume for it and 2 EQs, high and low. That's it. So now let's hear how each of those mixers will sound on a different signal. I will use a bass sound from my beloved Boomstar 4075 desktop synthesizer, and I will use a kick drum from Hex Inverter BD9, also a mutant snare by the same company, and I will just compare those with the different mixers. So let's start with the bass. That's how it sounds without any processing by the mixer. If I increase the gain, you can hear it adds some nice saturation on the peaks. Or we can destroy it totally, which also sounds lovely. I can add some highs and some lows. That's how it sounds cranked up. Everything on max. That's a bit too much, I would say. So let's come back to this. Now let's see how the BX sounds. So this is the Boss BX8 thing. And let's see what this does. This one seems like it distorts a bit earlier. It's not as aggressive as the Mackie. Different flavor, but for modern house and techno I would use the CR. It's more aggressive, at least for the bass. Now let's see how it sounds on the KM. In the middle position, sounds like that. That's how it sounds on the mid gain, and that's the extreme gain. This one is the noisiest one from all 3 of them. Okay, sounds really great also. So it's just a matter of taste. So now let's hear what the Mackie CR does to the bass drum. That's the pure bass drum. If we drive it, it loses some of the lowest end while driven. We can add that bottom, and at this point it just chokes. It sounds a bit flat, But that's what happens when you add too much of the distortion. It just rectifies the whole wave, and this sounds the nicest to me. So it just gets a bit of this hair of those razors on its back. We can add some highs to it. You can hear this noise hiss in the background, which I'm loving. It's just like the real deal. I have asked the designer Andrei Stratton how close these are to the originals, and he responded that they are very, very close. Now let's listen how it sounds on the iconic BX8 thing, pre-BX. Okay, that's flat, only louder with the volume. Now let's distort it. Yeah, I can understand why those guys in the 90s have used that. It has that pleasant flab. It's not as aggressive as the CR, but it gels with the kick better. Even when it's extreme, it's not choking as much as the CR. And if we add some lows, yeah, that is massive. That's about how I like it. Punchy and cuts nicely through the mix with this extra saturation on top. Now let's see how that will sound through the KM60. So pre-KM right here, input output. This one actually distorts really easily, faster than the other ones, because as you can see, I haven't actually cranked it in here. It's in the neutral position, the lowest gain, and it already distorts. So that's in the mid distortion mode, and that's the highest gain right here. It's in the vein of BX8, but it just distorts faster, so there's less control over it. So that wouldn't be my first choice for a bass drum, because it's just funky right off the bat. It still sounds nice and really heavy on the bass drum, but I just like it with the BX better. So now let's hear what it does to a snare. Snare signal through the CR. Yep, that is very nice. Let's add some heights to it. You can take it away, make it more mellow. You can add some body to it. So it's very edgy, and you can hear the background noise when it's pushed. That's the most natural setting, so we can hear the natural snap and transients. Now, if we increase the gain, it loses, obviously, the transient, because it's rectified, but we gain this sulfur, I like to call it, bright and distorted sound. Sounds interesting. See? A lot more transient. So it's always something in the middle. That's the best sound for me. Let's check it out on the last mixer, pre-KM, so it's the KM60. The mid distortion, the mid gain, and the you can hear, this one is really interesting, you can hear this kind of like a doubling. It chokes with the gain, and it is adding not only some background noise hiss from the circuit, but also kind of like a really fast short slap delay to it. So it's like a totally different snare now. Lots of hiss when you increase the high EQ on it. So it's very noisy. So as you have just heard, those little things can actually alter the sound that is run through them drastically. It can make any bass drum or any snare drum come to life and add a character to it. And I have been using them lately in my mixing sessions, not only in the modular patches, but mostly in my mixing sessions. Whenever I have a weak snare or a bass drum that needs some extra oomph, I'll just run through it and I call it a day. So they are cheap, really useful, and well built like all the other modules from Feedback modules. So I strongly recommend 3 of them. In my book, these are hidden gems. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, do not hesitate and comment below. Also, if you found that video useful, please subscribe, like, and spread the good word. Thanks. See you next time. Bye-bye.